Welcome to All Bodies on Bikes, the podcast, where all bodies are good bodies, all bikes are good bikes, and all rides should be celebrated.
All Bodies on Bikes is a movement to create and foster a size-inclusive bike community. So join your hosts, I'm Maggie.
And I'm Marley.
As we explore the complexities of the biking world, help us break down barriers and create the world that we want to see. And don't forget that all bodies really means all bodies, not just larger bodies, but bodies of all sizes, ages, races, abilities, genders, sexualities, and beyond.
Come along for the ride. We're live.
We are live. Ladies and gentlemen, hello, and welcome to the All Bodies on Bikes podcast, where all bodies are good bodies, all bikes are good bikes, and all rides should be celebrated. We are at the REI flagship store in Washington, D.C. We are recording live in front of a group of beautiful people who are here for the National Bike Summit. And we're, yeah. See, don't they sound beautiful? We're so glad to have everybody here tonight, and we are going to get into some pretty fantastic conversations here. Isn't that right, Marley?
Yeah, I'm super excited. I feel like I'm like living out my NPR dreams right now. Do you guys ever watch or not watch, listen to, is it like Wait, Don't Tell Me? Where during the pandemic, it was like recorded in front of a live audience of no one. That's not the case. So thank you everybody for coming. We're very, very excited to have you. We don't really know what we're doing. So we're just kind of winging it. But that's actually the story of my life. I just make it look like I know what I'm doing. So a couple housekeeping notes for folks that are here. We've got some note cards in the back. We're saving some time at the end for questions. So there's note cards and pens. Feel free to ask us anything. We might not answer them, but we probably will. They can be for us, for our guests, who we will introduce in just a minute. And then there's also awesome swag. So REI is one of the All Bodies on Bikes sponsors. They give us money, which is phenomenal. We are almost a nonprofit, so that's excellent. And so we're very thankful for their support. We're also super thankful to Feisty Media, who helps us produce this and makes the magic happen. And then huge shout out to the League of American Bicyclists, specifically Alyssa Proudfoot Siegel. Did I say that right? For getting us here and making this all happen. So thank you all for joining. The conversation will last about an hour, and then you're welcome to join us in the courtyard for a fire and or drag bingo next door at the brewery. Do you want to introduce our guests?
Let's do it.
All right.
So with us on the podcast today, we have some friends from the Metro Washington Association of Blind Athletes. That is a nonprofit organization that since 2015 has been offering recreational and competitive athletic opportunities to blind and visually impaired youth and adults in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So all the places and all the things. Metro Washington Association of Blind Athletes, we're going to call, how were we pronouncing it earlier?
I say MWABA.
That's what we're going to call it from now on. MWABA was founded by blind athletes, and the majority of its board of directors are blind. MWABA drives positive societal change by challenging misconceptions about blindness through improving fitness, promoting the capabilities of blind people, and sharing wellness and community with sighted counterparts. MWABA began its tandem bike program in 2017. So they rent tandem bike lockers at the Bethesda and Eastern Market metro stations, and they do tandem bike rides on Thursday evenings and on weekends on the Anacostia Riverwalk and Capitol Crescent trails. In 2022, MWABA held over 40 rides, during which 27 distinct captains rode with 28 distinct stokers. And we're going to learn a little more about those positions as we continue to talk to our friends here. On the far end here, we have Mr. Tom Foley, joined MWABA in 2021 after moving to the district. A longtime blind stoker from Northern California, Tom rode with the team. We talked about this too, Alameda.
I think so.
Is that how I did? Okay, good. I did it just the way I was supposed to. In the San Francisco Bay Area. He has completed multiple centuries and particularly abhors steep inclines and strong headwinds. Yep, same, very much so. Since joining MWABA, He has ridden in the 50 States Ride and the Great Pumpkin Ride. He regularly participates in the Bethesda Evening Ride and has enjoyed learning about all the great cycling trails and opportunities throughout the DMV. And next to Tom, we have Miss Shira Gordon. Became a tandem captain with the Metro Washington Association of Blind Athletes in 2017 and became a board member in 2020. She has ridden with over 20 blind stokers and has trained new captains and stokers. Shira has ridden on all 50 state streets of DC, done many rides on bike trails in the area, completed 3 centuries, and biked from Montreal to Quebec City, all with MWABA stokers. So all the things, again, all the things. Thank y'all for being with us tonight. Yeah, for sure. All right.
So I guess to start out, we only have one microphone, which is a little bit unfortunate because of technical difficulties. So trying to keep an eye on questions from the audience that is online as well. So feel free to send those in. But we're going to get started with a couple questions for our guests. So we'd love to hear from both of you. Why tandem bicycles? How did you get into bicycling? What does it mean to you?
I'm Shira. I started riding a single bike when I was a kid. I got less interested once I got a driver's license, but then around about 10 years ago, I didn't have a car and I got back into biking, and I've kept biking for fun, for transportation. And then in 2017, I saw on a Facebook group that MWABA was starting up and looking for people to captain a tandem. I'd never ridden a tandem, either on the front or the back, but I decided to try it out. And it was a fun new challenge. It's a really cooperative experience. It's a lot of fun. So I decided to stick with it. Yeah.
Thanks. And I'm Tom Foley. So I started riding a bike as a kid, and I never got a driver's license. And so I'm a blind guy sitting here with a guide dog. You're all really glad I never got a driver's license, actually. And so, I moved to California for school. I moved to Berkeley, and, I saw well enough to be able to ride a single bike. So I sort of learned to ride in Berkeley, California, great area to ride. But, over the period of a number of years, I lost most of my eyesight. And I had this sort of moment where I was riding along down a street. It was just this beautifully well-paved street, and it was a warm, sunny day, and the sun was sort of poking through the leafy trees. And I came around a corner, and I ran smack back into the back of a parked UPS truck because it looked like a shadow to me. And I got up off the ground, and I thought, perhaps tandems. And I was really fortunate. I'd been riding with a couple of good friends, and one of them said, we were planning to do this double century at 100 miles a day. And he said, why don't we try a tandem? And I really, I didn't want to give up the independence of a single bike, but I thought, well, I'm willing to try it. And during that ride, I discovered something really important, which is, 2 guys in reasonable shape on a tandem can move very, very quickly. Especially on flats and rollers and downhill. And it really sort of juiced everybody's, competitive nature. And it was just a super exciting 2-day, double century where we spent a lot of time, just zipping right by people really, really quickly. It managed to get a couple of other friends interested in tandeming as well. Then moved out here and was fortunate enough to meet Shira and the whole MWABA group and take up cycling here in the DMV.
That's fantastic. I like one of my favorite things about groups of cyclists, and you just really highlighted it, is how casually you said 2 centuries, like in a 2-day period. I love how you're just like, yeah, it was Tuesday, so we did that thing. Exactly. Yes. But we just say it super casually. So tell us a little bit more about, like, we've used the words captain and stoker. What does that mean? And how do y'all communicate with each other when you're on the bike? We want to know all the things.
No,
Okay. So well, at least the tandems I've ridden on, the captain is the person who sits in front, and they're the one who can see. They they control the steering, the brakes, the shifters. Some tandems work a little differently, and sometimes I've seen tandems where the captain is actually in back and the stoker is in a more recumbent position in front, so that can vary. And then the stoker provides a lot of power. The other thing is the tandems I've ridden, the captain and stoker pedals are connected by an extra chain. And so the captain and stoker pedals need to be in the same position and rotating at the same rate. So there's some necessary communication to know that you're pedaling at the same rate, that if you're stopping, starting, all of that. So, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and obviously over time, you develop a lot of trust and sort of synchronicity with the captain. And one of the things I've noticed, over the years, and especially if you want to do a lot of riding with someone, is the cadence, right? Because I'm one of the just curious in the room, how many people like a really high cadence say "I"? I'm right there with you. No one. Okay, excellent. I've gotten on a tandem with people who like 140 cadence, and I'm like, I can't do that. I'm going to fall off. I'm going to die. And so, that's one aspect that's, particularly important, especially if you're, sort of riding competitively.
So I kind of have a follow-up question on that, if that's okay. I do Zwift or virtual cycling occasionally, and it's always yelling at me to pedal faster. I don't know if anybody else ever had that experience, but I'm like, I don't want to. Do you ever get a captain where you're like, I don't want to pedal faster? Can we renegotiate this a little bit?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think probably the most important thing on a tandem is communication. And so, you can communicate about gears. It's really important for the captain to communicate, about bumps in the road and turns. You want to make sure a hard right-hand turn, your right pedal's up. But again, cadence and the speed is something that, you develop pretty good communication skills very early on, I think. What do you think, Shira?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, I think you just kind of communicate and figure that out as you go along. And I think if you've ridden with someone a bunch, you kind of get used to more the type of speed they want to do. I mean, there's someone in our group who's done triathlons and is a serious competitive athlete. And I rode with him at the DC bike party, and we were going very slowly. And I think he was a little confused about what was happening, but it was fun. And, just kind of communicating while you're riding or communicating ahead of the ride what the plan is, what you're going to be doing is usually a good thing.
So as a rule of thumb, do y'all usually like pair up and stay in a pair for an extended period of time? Or do you kind of force people, that thing where you force people to group up with somebody that they didn't come with? One of those situations.
I think it's kind of a combination. During the pandemic, we paired people up and tried to have people only ride with, one or two people so that there'd be less community contacts. We'll also generally pair people based on similar sizes, both to like fit the tandems better and to ride better together. But we do like to also switch it up so that people just get the chance to know different people and get more comfortable with riding with different people. Because each week we'll send an email saying who wants to ride this week, and then we'll just try to get as many pairs together to ride as possible. But there are also people who've just become really good friends, and they'll ride extra together. They've click really well, or if they're doing longer rides, it can be good to pair people who've ridden together before. So it's kind of a combination.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we've got a question from the online audience, I guess is what it's called, because our live audience is here. And for those of you who are just coming in, we do have note cards in the back. Please feel free to take one, write a question down, and we'll get to them. And it can be about our guests. It can be about All Bodies and Bikes. It can be about whatever. So question from the online audience is, can you tell us more about MWABA? Is it a national organization? Are there local chapters? Like, what does that look like?
We're a local organization. I think we are at least somewhat connected to a national group called USABA, United States Association of Blind Athletes, I believe. There are some other tandem organizations that we're aware of. We also partner with Achilles is mostly a running group, but they do some triathlons, and they're a national group that has a DC chapter. So I think we have some connections to more national groups, but we are based in DC. There's also a group in Alexandria, Virginia called the Tuesday Night Tandems, and we collaborate a lot with them. But mostly a local group.
And you mentioned the running group. Do y'all just focus on cycling, or are there other activities that MWABA does? Which is my new favorite thing to say also. Just gonna throw that out.
We do hikes about once a month or every other month. So we're also always happy to have more volunteers for that. Goalball, which I'll have Tom explain in a second. Yoga about once a month. There's some other groups that we somewhat partner with. There's an Out of Sight Dragons, which is a boating group. There's a kayaking group we sometimes partner with. There's a rock climbing group it's a separate group that we also partner with. So we do, kind of a variety.
Sure. So goalball is a sport for blind athletes. And if you can imagine, basically 3 players per side on a court, and the court's about the size of a basketball court. Everybody's blindfolded, and the goal of the game is to take a ball that's about the size of a basketball, weighs 3 pounds, and it has a sleigh bell in it. And the goal is to whip the ball along the ground past the 3 people on the other side. So the ball weighs about 3 pounds. It's got a bell in it. And especially, good players and people at the Olympic level can throw the ball at about 50 miles an hour. So your goal, should you choose to accept it, is to throw yourself on the ground on purpose in front of this 3-pound ball moving at, 40 or 50 miles an hour while blindfolded. And it's the most fun ever next to cycling. So, when you're really sore from cycling, your legs can't move anymore, all you want to do is throw yourself on the ground. And that's actually how I first got to know MWABA is in California. I used to come out here for work a lot, and I was here on weekends. And so I was able to make their goalball practice. And then once moving here, I got hooked up with the kayaking and the cycling and the goalball and lots of the other great things that MWABA does.
So last week, it's actually coming out tomorrow, but we had a Paralympian on the show. So you should all go listen to the episode. But you mentioned goalball in the Olympic level. Is it in the Paralympics? Okay, Tom says yes. Is tandem cycling in the Paralympics, and is that a goal?
I think it's in the Olympics, and I think the person I mentioned who's done triathlons and stuff or maybe someone else. I think there's an Olympic training center in Colorado that some people have gone to, but I'm not too familiar. Do you know more about it?
It's definitely a Paralympic sport, and the men and women's Paralympic teams train in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center. The Olympics are definitely not a goal for me, but I so appreciate you asking the question. I think you might have made my night. Thank you for that.
All right, back to me. Well, you're welcome. I don't know. I often will ride stupidly long distances. And people are like, you could do that. Like, I really believe that we can all do all sorts of things, even if we're not good at it. We could just do it. So I guess a more serious question. Have you found the cycling community to be inclusive of blind riders, or what can we all do better to make it more inclusive?
I think generally, yes. It might sound small, but a pet peeve that some people have is that sometimes when we'll be riding a tandem past or someone else is passing us, they'll say, the person in back isn't pedaling, which, as we explained, doesn't really make sense since both feet have to be pedaling together. And so that's somewhat of a pet peeve. There are other jokes or comments you can say to, say hi and express things about tandem biking. And then, we've also found, the fact that we worked with DC to get the larger sized tandem bike lockers. That was something that was helpful. And some of the local bike rides, especially the ones put on by the Washington Area Bicyclists Association, they've allowed us to participate and basically not charge the captain for riding, and saying you just have to pay the cost for one person. And that's been helpful, just to make sure that we have enough captains who want to do those bike rides. I mean, I think in general, one of our challenges is having enough captains to ride. So we are always want to encourage people to try it out, even if it's not something you've done before. We're happy to help train people and pair with you with someone who's trained other new captains. And I think it's just a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, you know, I think the cycling community is sort of one of the more open and welcoming communities out there. But I did want to share a story of something that happens a lot. So, you know, on a weekend ride, or particularly on an organized ride, you know, let's just say that Shira and I were riding together. You know, one of the things that always happens at those rides is, but obviously, if Shira and I are riding together, we want Shira in front, right? Can we all agree? You know, we probably want the sighted person in front. But you know, what happens is you meet other tandems, because, you know, tandems are kind of cool and people hop on your back wheel, right? Because if you've never done it at an organized ride, drafting a tandem is a wonderful experience. It's a lot easier. But you know what happens is you'll pass, and often it's a husband and wife on the tandem, and quite often you'll see the husbands up front. And, you know, Shira and I will go, you know, riding by them, and they're like, hey, look, hey, the woman's in front, honey. And, you know, that always sort of gets noticed at more organized rides where more tandems are there as well.
All right, so we've got another question from our friends who are watching online. What can sighted cyclists do to encourage those with limited sight onto bikes, especially for those who have not cycled before?
Oh, okay, great, thanks. Well, you know, I think especially locally, you know, tell folks about MWABA. You know, MWABA, you know, brought this, you know, quite recently to the DMV. So, you know, please share this podcast with friends, share information about MWABA with friends. You know, it's such an inclusive and fun sport. I mean, I suspect everyone in here at one time or another has been on an exercise bike, right? And it's just so much more fun to be on an actual bike, you know, out on the roads, whether it be, you know, rural or even, you know, city driving has its fun pieces to it as well. But, you know, share information about MWABA, you know, support MWABA, but also, because I know you have a international audience, right? So, you know, Google the name of your town and, you know, bike riding for the blind, or, you know, Shira mentioned it earlier, U.S. Association of Blind Athletes is also a great place to start. But I think most importantly, you know, be supportive, be encouraging. If folks haven't been terribly active, you know, tell them, you know, it can be done. You know, it's all about putting all bodies on bikes.
And I'll just add that we, you know, our normal rides are on almost all the time on, you know, off-road trails. And so, you know, if we have people who want to do centuries, we try to pair them with captains who are interested, but we're also happy to do the 5-10 mile bike rides and not start off too ambitiously. And similarly, if we have new stokers, we'll pair them with a more experienced captain. So we're always happy to welcome, you know, new stokers who haven't ridden a tandem before or haven't ridden a bike for a while or anything like that. James.
So a more practical question. We got one actually. It's from Maggie's mom, who's watching online, which is really cute. Maggie's mom asked, "When you're riding, do you have anything that indicates that you are riding with a blind cyclist?"
Generally not. We have we got these jerseys made that say on the front Metro Washington Association of Blind Athletes, and I think on the back they say Tandemonium, but don't otherwise indicate that we're riding with blind athletes. And the runners, they I think have wear vests that say blind, and sometimes they'll wear them on the bike rides. But yeah, I think generally not.
Very cool. Thank you. And then we had a question from it's not a studio, in REI audience. And I would love to hear, the answer from both of you on this, because I imagine being involved with this organization has really impacted your life in all sorts of ways. But how was your life before finding the organization? And what have you learned from being a part of it?
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah, I'm the newcomer. So, it was great. I mentioned in the open, I moved here about 2 years ago for a new job. And, I knew a couple of people in DC, but more professionally, and they weren't really outdoorsy or recreational types. So I was really fortunate to know about the organization, as I mentioned, through the Go Ball. But when I discovered the cycling and frankly all the other things that they had to offer, it was really game changing, because I work a lot and there's a gym in the building, but again, being able to get outside and discover the Anacostia Trail and the Crescent, and we've done some rides when the streets were closed down. It was just really neat to be able to experience DC that way. And been able to do it in the sunshine, been able to do it when it's overcast. Managed to, we did a ride one time just in this torrential downpour, which was very memorable and super fun. But somebody also mentioned just getting to know not only the stokers but some other blind athletes. And but I got to meet a space lawyer. Did you know there were space lawyers? I didn't know there were space lawyers. That was really cool. And just getting to see the different things that people are doing here in the DMV has been really inspiring to become a part of, and also learn the local area a lot better than I would have if I was just trying to do it on my own.
Yeah, I moved here in 2016, and so I'd already started getting involved with the bike community. But I think I just really enjoyed meeting people and getting involved with this group. And I hadn't known very many people before who were blind, and so learning more about that, and just getting to help organize rides and just being more involved in that community, and people with a big diversity of ages and diverse in other ways has been a really great experience.
So group rides as part of a team, what would you say is like the most rewarding part of going on rides and kind of that style? And then also, because I'm sure there are some, what are some of the more challenging parts of riding that way?
I think the one thing that's fun about riding with a group of tandems is people will, as we were saying, notice that there are tandems coming by, but they'll say, "Oh, there's a tandem. Oh, there's another tandem. There's 3 tandems." So that can be fun. I think it's fun just to, there's a camaraderie of riding with one person, but then there's kind of more of that of riding with a bigger group. I do think sometimes with tandems, it can be starting and stopping and going up hills are the hardest parts. And so like we were doing the 50 states ride, and this past year I was doing the 30-mile version, and there were 7 of us tandems, and we were somewhat trying to stay together but trying to also follow the route. And so sometimes it's hard to keep a big group of tandems together in that situation, but as long as people kind of meet up at the end or meet up for lunch or whatever, that also happens on group rides too.
Yeah, there's definitely a camaraderie to it, and as Shira mentioned, when a handful of tandems goes by, it really sort of captures people's attention, and that's super fun too, because people get excited about a number of tandems. There's definitely a social aspect to it as well, but it again, Shira already mentioned it, but starting and stopping can be a little hard, especially if you're clicking in and clicking out. You have to do it perfectly. Watch this, in tandem. Sorry, I'll be here all day. But once I think once you've ridden with someone once or twice, it becomes almost second nature. So yeah, everybody should try tandeming.
All right, we're gonna do a quick poll of the audience. Who here let's say has been on a tandem? Oh, so that's like 80% of the audience. I went on tandem one time and I was very scared, but it was a lot of fun. Like we just giggled the whole day. So I can imagine like it just adds another element to the fun and excitement that is cycling. So we got a question. We actually got two basically of the same questions. So this week has been the League of American Bicyclists National Bike Summit, which brings in advocates and infrastructure folks and policy folks. So this question is kind of geared towards that. So is there any bike infrastructure or policy changes that could be put in place to make riding better for you? And is that things that as advocates, we can help advocate for? But we'd just love to learn more about that.
I mean, I think one thing is in terms of bike infrastructure that sometimes if there are sharp turns or if there are narrow bollards, those can be challenging on a tandem. Because if you're making a turn as a captain, you can kind of judge and you can see what's happening and avoid crashing into things. But sometimes it's hard to judge whether the person behind will like scrape against something, and if they can't see what's happening, they can get scraped up. And then if there's like hairpin turns up a bridge or something, those can be harder. And then making those things more inclusive for tandems also helps for people who have a long tail with a kid or a trailer with a kid or something like that. So those are some things. And then in addition to the like adaptive bike share programs, which I think I already talked about, and also like the larger tandem bike lockers, or just being aware of tandems if you're designing parking spots. Also allowing tandem bikes on public transportation can be useful. In DC, it's my understanding that they are now allowed on the metro. But when I've tried looking at Amtrak, I think generally they're not allowed. And I understand like there can be limitations of space, but maybe even saying like as a reasonable accommodation will accommodate you, or explaining how some of those things can work.
All right, we've got another question from our audience here, and this one is specifically for Tom. I'm going to read it dramatically because I feel like it's written dramatically. We want to know what it's like to trust a captain with your life. And also, what do you look for in a good captain?
Well, I think all of us on the way home tonight trust our lives to lots of people. But I get it's sort of two answers to that. So a long time ago, I used to ride a lot more aggressively and compete. And I had the opportunity over the years to ride with a couple of people that I rode with a lot. And so, you really get into sync with people, and, you learn to, it's almost like dancing. You learn to read someone's body language. We talked about it earlier. Communication is really important, especially if you're moving very quickly. A tandem going downhill, especially a steep hill, 40, 50, 60 miles an hour is not out of the question, right? So you do need to have, complete faith in that captain. It reminds me, years and years ago, my son, he was about 16, and I was getting back from a ride with the guy I always used to ride with. And my son was like, "We should go for a ride, and it'll be fine if we crash." And I'm like, "It will so not be fine if we crash." I don't bounce the way you do. And so, but at this point, recreational riding, it's pretty, there's training involved, and there is a training this Thursday for anybody who's interested. But it's pretty quick to pick up. It's interesting. I've managed to do rides with my oldest daughter, who's about 5'4" and 100 pounds, and so it's an interesting opportunity to really be able to physically do something in combination with somebody else. And I think most people, there's certainly trust when you start, but I think that also grows over time as well.
Awesome. Well, we are just about to wrap up this portion. So audience, get your questions in now because we always have our 2 final questions. And if you're a fan of the podcast, you know what's coming. I don't know if either of you know what's coming. It's not bad. But we would love to hear from each of you. What does your perfect day on a bike look like, feel like? Just describe your perfect day on a bicycle to us.
I think this is hard for me to think too precisely about, but I think a 60, 70 degree day, hopefully on a tandem. I like going out to like the Poolsville area and seeing kind of farms and country roads that don't have too many cars on them, and stopping for some good food somewhere. So I think something like that. I also love doing the DC loop, doing the WNRD. So there are lots of places I like to bike in the area too.
Oh boy, mine would be pretty similar. So yeah, a nice 60 or 70 degree day. One of the things I've noticed out here is there's a lot more rolling hills than Northern California. So maybe, a country road, a nice breeze, rolling hills, and, really be able to, open up a tandem with a group of friends would be really delightful. And I'm really excited about learning, more areas where there's good cycling and good tandeming here.
All right. And then our other final question is, what is something that you wish you got to talk about a little more? It can be bike related. It can also very not be.
I think I do talk a lot about tandem biking to plenty of people, but I do wish more people would say that they want to try out tandem biking. For me, there was a learning curve, and it did take time for me to feel comfortable and learn new skills. But it is something I want people to get involved with. Also, if people have an extra, an old tandem sitting in their garage that they're not using, maybe they thought, someone in their family would bike with them a lot and that didn't happen. We'd be happy to put that tandem to good use, whether you want to donate it or loan it. And of course, if people want to either set up, we also like to partner with different groups. If you want to do a different type of group ride or a group hike or other types of events, those can be fun to both just experience new things and collaborate with new groups.
Yeah, it sounds like this room has a lot of folks who have tried tandems, but if you haven't tried easy for you to say, being in front on a tandem, give it a try. It's like cycling, but it's a completely different experience. And also, the all the services. So MWABA is a nonprofit, and all the services they provide, especially the cycling, are free to participants and the volunteers through the volunteership of the captains. But bikes do cost money, rental spaces cost money, transportation costs money. So if folks have the ability, it is a registered nonprofit. I believe it's MWABA.org. That's MWABA .org. We'd really appreciate your support, and we appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys today as well.
We're so glad you could come out.
And I lied. We have another question. I'm really enjoying this conversation. So we do have some more questions that are just like basic all bodies on bikes questions, but one specifically for the two of you. What advice do you have for people who want to start something like MWABA where they live, especially if they live in a smaller community, i.e. not a big city like DC?
I wasn't involved with starting MWABA, so I don't have too much advice, but I think we're happy to if you reach out to us, we're happy to talk about what we do here and put you in touch with the people who founded the organization. I think they also partnered with especially the group in Alexandria partnered with Potomac Peddlers also, and I think if there are other organizations doing similar work, or other bike groups, or other even, some of the people in MWABA are involved with the National Federation of the Blind or other blindness organizations. So I think there are lots of, different resources and people you can talk to.
Just feel, again, the website is gomwaba.org. Please feel free to reach out. No need to reinvent the wheel. There are folks who can help.
Wonderful. Let's give a big round of applause to our guests. Thank you so much. A quick eye if you learned something new. That is unanimous, folks. When I come to DC, I feel like a parliamentary procedure pro. Like, okay, that clearly not any debate nerds in here, but whatever. So before the podcast, we put a poll out to the National Bike Summit audience and our audience in general, and we got a couple of questions. But please do feel free. We'll also just do like a raise of hands. I don't know how that'll work, but we've got a couple of them. So one of them was, how did Marley prepare for her 100-mile ride at Mid-South? Not well. Honestly, I did a couple of like 30-ish mile rides before Mid-South. So for folks who aren't aware, it was a 100-mile gravel race. Some folks were racing, I was riding, but basically just kind of dialing in my nutrition and hydration, which for me means buying food. That's one of the tricks to a long ride. If you've done a long distance ride, you just got to eat and hydrate all day long. And folks seem to be amazed that, so I got DFL, which is dead effing last. But I set the course record for the fastest DFL, and people seem surprised that like it took me 14 hours to do 100 miles. But I've done, similar to you, 3 other centuries before this. They all took that same amount of time. Like I was fully ready for it. So yeah, I just rode my bike and kind of got mentally prepared, had my playlist ready, and was ready to spend a full day on the bicycle. Next question is, where do we, parentheses, larger women, find bike clothes that feel comfortable and make us feel good about how we look? That's the $1 million question. There are a couple brands out there. I'll pass it down the lines if folks have things to add. Full disclosure, I do ride for Pearl Izumi. They help me pay my bills. And they're okay at larger clothes. And they know this. It's something we're working on. They go up to a 3X right now, which we know is not big enough. I looked actually out at the REI floor today and I didn't see anything in bigger sizes, but it's often available on the website. There's a couple other brands out there. Velocio goes up to a 3X. Fat Lad at the Back is out of the UK. They go up to a 6X. And I think more and more brands are getting on board with it. And the other thing I say is, you don't have to wear bike clothes to ride a bike. You can wear anything you want to, but a good pair of padded shorts with a chamois will go a long way towards comfort. But there's a couple other brands out there. We've got some resources on our website for it. But I'm optimistic that, with these conversations and with the work that we're doing, more and more brands will see the business case and start making bigger clothes. Anything to add? Cool. I love this question, and I would love to get the panel, our group's audio, whatever, input. So I want to mountain bike, but I feel I will be too slow for the group rides, and I'm also self-conscious about my weight. What tips do you have for me to get to a point where I can join in? I also feel this way. I often will hesitate to go on group rides because I'm afraid of being left behind, which was actually the impetus for starting All Bodies on Bikes. So I would say talk to the group leader, let them know it's your first time, and ideally they will modify the pace, make sure they're regrouping at the top of hills. So I think, that's the first step. Talk to the ride leader. Let them know how you're feeling. I know when I lead rides, it's always helpful to know when there's a new person, when there's somebody who's feeling anxious or maybe has a bum knee, and like, hey, I might walk this hill. If you'll wait for me, that'd be great. So I think honesty and communication goes a long way. I think also being okay with saying, okay, maybe this group ride isn't for me, and politely telling the leader, like, if you're just not having a good time, there's no reason for you to suffer through the next hour and a half of the ride. So let the leader know, hey, thanks for the ride. I'm going to go do my own thing. I don't know, other tips for joining, not even just a mountain bike ride, but a group ride if you're afraid you're not going to fit in or be too slow.
I think it's one thing that we've usually tried to do is have people like exchange phone numbers before a group ride, because as I was saying, sometimes it's hard for tandems to stick together. And so, if some people want to turn back earlier or do a different route, it can just be good to know what's happening. And also, I mean, I'm not necessarily the expert in this, but different, sometimes groups will list what their pace is, or you'll have a sense of, is this a really fast ride or a slow ride? So getting a sense of like, and is it a no drop ride of whether it's, a good fit for that day.
And the one thing I would add is just remember that if you try a ride and it doesn't work out, I like what Marley said about like checking with them beforehand. Hopefully they'll be honest with you and they'll tell you enough that you need to know so that you can have a good time on the ride. If you go on your first group ride and it does not go well, please don't give up, because there are good groups out there. Especially for mountain biking. I have a group at home that I absolutely love, but I had tried a couple other ones before I found it. So if it's something that you want to do, you can find a group. So just keep looking for.
And then to kind of address the second part, this person was feeling insecure about their weight. And this might be an unpopular opinion, but like, do it fat, wear the bikini. Like, you might feel insecure, but nobody else cares. Nobody else gives a shit. And if they do, that's their problem. It's not yours. So do the things that make you feel good. I took an e-mountain bike out last week so I could keep up with some friends. Oh my God, I want one so bad. Like, you still have to work, you still have to do all the things, but I was able to like climb these hills and keep up with friends who live in much smaller bodies than me, are much faster, and we were able to ride together. So, I would say rent an e-bike if you can, because it is a game changer. Anything to add from Tom, Shira, Maggie? Great advice. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm going to do one last scan of the audience to see if you have any questions. Otherwise, we're going to close it out and go hang out by the fire. We do have one question in the back. Yeah. Love this question. So Alyssa, who is an organizer with the Bike League, asked us, what are our bike goals for this year? Mine is to listen to my body and not hurt my knee again. I'm not on a good track record for that. So I had knee surgery in September, and I just did 100 miles 2 weeks ago. And walking around DC this week, my knee has been aching quite a bit. So figuring out what's going on there and just to have some more fun. I unexpectedly got on 2 podiums last year, which was not intentional, but cyclocross is like very small in Arkansas. And so I got on 2 podiums. So maybe some more podiums, but ideally I would love to grow the sport so more and more women are out there, and then I'm not on the podium.
My word for the year is control, which I told somebody and they were like, that could be really bad. And so that's when I learned that it can be a noun or a verb. So it's something that I want to have, not something that I want to be. But most specifically, I find myself a lot on rides, like after maybe that halfway point, I'll pedal, coast. Pedal. And that wears you out 4 times faster than just riding at a decent cadence, even if it's slow, Tom. And so I've just been working on when I find myself doing that, being like, nope, catch a rhythm, and just kind of sit there. I do usually ride with like the bone conduction headphones, so I can still hear the birds and the crazy people in the vehicles around me, but I can also hear the music. And when I catch myself getting out of rhythm, I just fall into whatever song I'm listening to. So that's my big goal for the year, is to get better at being consistent.
I think one goal, we're organizing a big group camping trip that we got a grant through the Adventurous Cycling Association for. And it'll probably be about like 15 miles each way, which isn't a huge distance for me. But I think organizing more logistics of getting a big group to bike together and then camp and bike back is a goal for mine. And then also hoping to do some longer bike rides. Maybe I'll do another century. We'll see what happens.
I just want to get back on a bike. I too had knee surgery recently. I did not just do a century, however, and only here I had knee surgery and I did a century, and I'm taking it easy. It can all happen in one sentence. So, like, that's amazing. So again, I'm new to the area, but I heard about there's a bike path along the C&O Canal. And you can like start kind of a ways out, and you can ride and sort of like pull off into these little towns, and have meals, and there's places to stay and stuff, and that sounds delightful. So just hoping to get back on a bike and get my knee into cycling shape.
Awesome. I forgot. I also want to do more bike packing this year. We will actually be doing some all bodies on bikes campouts. I believe there's one happening in the DC area. Molly, our chapter leader here in DC, will be leading that. So we're going to go ahead and end the live stream. Everybody in the audience, you're welcome to come hang out with us on the patio, get some fresh air for a little bit, enjoy this beautiful space. Again, let's give it up for our guest from MWABA. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to the League of American Bicyclists for hosting us, to REI, to Feisty Media, and to all of you for being supporters. So make sure you go in and follow. I don't know if it's, does anybody know the answer? Is it like, is it follow? Is it subscribe to a podcast? What's the verb? All of the above. So please subscribe to the podcast, because that's the metric that matters, I'm learning. And tell your friends and share the episode. Thank you so much for joining us.
This is an All Bodies on Bikes podcast powered by Feisty Media. The show is produced by Maggie and Marley and edited by the team at Feisty Media. Thanks for listening.